important for you to know that yes, this is the career path that excites you, that this is the career path that you definitely want to go ahead and build for yourself. Some individual colleges may impose minimum mark requirements for 10th and 12th, etc. as well, but then as far as CAT goes, you need to have at least 50% marks in graduation. I've already told you most of these things are things that you've already studied in schools. So if you have access to high quality material and you are disciplined, you can definitely study on your own. You can automatically choose all the programs of all the 22 IIMs without any extra charge. But remember, I told you that there are 1200 more colleges that use the CAT scores. Hello and welcome to MBA Wallah English Medium, and my name is Vikrant. I am going to take you through a very important and a very relevant topic, and that is eligibility, syllabus, strategy and more. So let me set the context right. What is the need for this particular session? Now, I have been coaching people for 25 years where I've helped thousands of aspirants get into some of the most premium B schools of India as well as abroad. Now, I've noticed that when a person starts his MBA journey, he happens to have a lot of questions in his mind, but then he may not get the answers to all of those questions from a very credible source always. So my aim in this particular session is to tap into my experience of talking to thousands of people who begin their CAT journey and gather all the questions that they ask me so that I can put them all in here in a single session. And as a result, when you start your journey, you are in a far more confident, far more comfortable a position, and you don't have any ambiguities or, even more importantly, misconceptions about your CAT preparation. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So very first thing, let's go in for an overview of this particular exam. So what all things would people typically like to know? So let's see. So first up, importance and scale of the CAT exam. So we as youngsters constantly think in terms of building a great career for ourselves, and there are a lot of different avenues that can lead to that career. So I look at the newspaper around and I see a lot of people who would prepare for SSC and UPSC and the railway exams and for all those other exams for PSUs. Then there are a lot of people who would also opt for careers in design, careers in technology, right? So similarly, we also have this very lucrative option available to us, and that is a career in management. In fact, I very often tell people that when you are not very sure of what you want to do, MBA is actually a really good option for you. You know why? Come to think of it, let us say that you appear for the bank PO exam and you succeed. So what will you do? You will join a public sector bank and you will start there as a probationary officer. Now, you may like that job or you may not like that job. So in case you do not like that job, what now? You'd have to go back to square one. And that is why if you want to get into bank PO, it's important for you to know that yes, this is the career path that excites you, that this is the career path that you definitely want to go ahead and build for yourself. On the other hand, if you don't have that certainty, then where does MBA fit in? So see, MBA is a very open-ended program that equips you with all those different skill sets required to run a wide variety of businesses. So you're not confined to a single business or a single aspect of business from the word go. So the first year is typically common for everyone. So what happens is that you are taught about various things. So you study a bit of business math, business statistics, economics, finance, marketing. You get an exposure to all the different functions of a business, and on top of that you work on case studies, at times live industry projects, you go through internships. So now that you have a lot more information, you can take an educated decision on what it is that you want to do subsequently, and then you can decide on a specialization or your electives accordingly in the second year, and then build a career. And even then, after MBA, if you start with a job that eventually turns out to be not to your liking, you'd always, at least in the first 3, 4, 5 years, get these opportunities to change the sector somewhat. And as a result, it's an amazing area for people who may not have that kind of career clarity. On the other hand, if you are sure that you want to do an MBA, then obviously you want to get into some of the top colleges of the country or maybe even the world. Now, it is here that CAT comes into picture. So CAT is an exam which is conducted by these colleges called Indian Institutes of Management. Okay, so these happen to be some of the most premier colleges in the country, and as of now, we actually have 22 such Indian Institutes of Management. And not only that, so these 22 colleges use CAT as an exam to shortlist candidates for the next rounds of selection. And apart from this, you have close to 1200 other colleges. Some of them are once again absolutely elite. So when I talk about SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, MDI Gurgaon, MICA Ahmedabad, IITs, Bombay, Delhi, IIFT, lot of other premier colleges do use the score of the CAT exam to shortlist people, and that is what makes this easily one of the most sought after, one of the most aspired for exam in the country. So at the end of the day, I think we write an exam because it leads to certain avenues that are attractive, and when it comes to the CAT, it gives you access to some of those absolute top-notch colleges, management colleges of the country. If I look at all of these colleges combined, yes, you would have a lot of seats, but I would typically say that we have around 8 to 10,000 very high quality seats available. And if I add some more good seats to it, then I'd probably say that we have somewhere between 20 to 30,000 good seats available for MBA in the country. But how many people vie for those seats? So the data would of course change from year to year, but normally you would see roughly around 2.5 lakh individuals aspiring for those 20 to 30,000 excellent seats in some of the premier colleges of the country. So that can give you an inkling, give you an idea of the scale of the challenge that we actually face and the scale that even the college faces. So if you look at it from the perspective of a single college, you'd notice that the college may have 200 seats, 250 seats. In a college like FMS, in fact, less than 100 seats at times, and so many people vie for those seats, and it becomes pretty challenging for the colleges as well. So typically, when it comes to the registration, the CAT would come up with its notification roughly around July, August, and that is the time when you need to be ready. These dates obviously keep on changing from year to year. But roughly July, August, September, these are the 3 months when a lot of notifications come out by a lot of different B schools, and you need to be then be ready for it then. And when it comes to fees, once again, the application fees for the CAT also keeps on varying, changing year to year. But for a general category student, it usually hovers around 2,500. So I think this year it was around 2,600. So we expect it to be within this range. So maybe over the course of next couple of years, it can remain between 2,500 and 3,000 rupees. And then of course there are colleges that you join subsequently, and the colleges will have a separate fees for their courses. There is a vast amount of variation there, and there is no point really talking about it. You can end up paying anywhere between 1 lakh for the entire course to say around 35 lakh, 37 lakh for the entire course. And the exam, CAT particularly, typically takes place on the last Sunday of November, but think of it as a tentative date. This is the pattern that they've followed for the last few years. Will they follow it in the future? Maybe yes, maybe no. When I was an aspirant, CAT used to take place on the second Sunday of December. But then somewhere along the way, they did change it, and now they are on to a relatively different schedule. So in all likelihood, you can think of November end as the D-Day when you appear for this exam, and that exam and your performance in that exam eventually ensures whether you are shortlisted for the next round or not. But is the CAT exam the only thing that matters when it comes to shortlisting and selection? Not really. There are certain eligibility criteria that also play a role. So first up, you need to have some minimum marks required, usually in graduation, although some individual colleges may impose minimum mark requirements for 10th and 12th, etc. as well. But then as far as CAT goes, you need to have at least 50% marks in graduation. Okay, and this is for general category. For SC, ST, NC, OBC, PWD, the requirement is going to be relatively fewer marks, lesser percentage. I'm not getting into that, otherwise it will become overtly technical. You can always reach out to us and we can help you with that. Now, additionally, there are some educational requirements as well. So you need to be a graduate from a recognized university, plus you need to have at least 50% marks. If you are not a graduate, can you appear for the CAT exam? Actually, yes. So even if you've not finished your graduation, but you are in your final year, you can still appear for the CAT exam. But then there are a couple of provisos, there are a couple of additional details that you do need to keep in mind. Number one, the minimum marks requirements would still hold. So let us say you're in the final year, so you've gone through the first 2 years or 3 years, depending upon which program you are in. You need to have at least 50% marks until that point of time, and you need to carry an undertaking signed by the college that yes, this individual is in the final year and has so far met the minimum marks requirement. Right? So you can definitely apply even as a final year student. I'll add one more thing here, and that is that typically the academic session for an IIM starts in the month of July. Okay, which means that the June before it automatically becomes the cutoff date for your graduation. So let us say, I'm just taking an example, let us say you will start your MBA in July 27. So that's when the batch starts. So in June 27, you should be done with every formality related to the graduation except for the results. So all your exams, your lab, if you had a back, whatever, all those things must get over by June 27. Otherwise, you'd not be able to get admission. Your results can wait. The results can come out in September, October, November, and that will typically work. But by then, all the graduation related activities from your end should get over. So you can definitely apply even without graduation. Is there a specific stream that you need to belong to? Not really. As long as it is a recognized graduation, from whichever stream, they are absolutely okay with it. And when it comes to mode, is it necessary for you to have gone through a full-time in-person graduation? No. It should be full-time, yes, but even if it is an online grad or a distance education graduation, it's absolutely all right. IIMs would not really have any such requirements that it has to be that your graduation must not be using the distance education mode. No, it's absolutely okay even if you have gone through graduation through distance. And in fact, even UGC nowadays requires you to have a lot of different types of combinations. You can go in for dual graduation as long as one is offline, another one is online, or happen to be earlier they in fact had this requirement of different time slots. All those have also been taken away. So that's what is required in terms of the eligibility for appearing for the CAT exam. And then a lot of people come to me and ask me, sir, is work experience mandatory to get into a B school? My simple plain answer is no. For majority of the B schools in India, work experience is not a prerequisite for their flagship courses. Okay, so yes, there are some specialized courses offered by a lot of different colleges, particularly in the domain of executive education, where you will have work experience requirements, and they would typically vary from 2 years to 7 years. But for the flagship program at most of the colleges, including all the IIMs, there is absolutely no minimum work experience requirement in India. In fact, if you look at the ratio of freshers is to working people in the colleges, it would go from, I'd say, I'm just giving you the averages, of course. So 18% to 70% in the premier colleges is what you typically see. So for instance, if I talk about IIM Ahmedabad's 24-26 batch, 29% students studying in the flagship program are freshers. So it is not that you cannot make it there as a fresher. If you have work experience, it does give you a leg up. I mean, some of the colleges give you some extra marks, some extra weightage in the selection process, and therefore you will have that luxury, yes. But this by no means is necessary. Once again, yes, there are certain programs that keep it mandatory in some of the colleges, but then by and large, majority of the flagship programs at the premier B schools definitely do not have any work experience requirements from us. So if you had this question, rest assured, this should not really bother you much. Then moving on, let's talk about the structure and the format. Total questions and time. So it's a 120-minute exam that gives you 68 questions. Once again, this 68 is merely an indicative number. This number may keep on changing. Okay, so let's see, let's in fact break it down and then we can talk about it. So those 68 questions are divided into two broad categories. So you can have multiple choice questions and you can have non-multiple choice questions, which are popularly called theta. If I talk about CAT last year, the most recently conducted CAT, we had 20 non-MCQs and we had the rest of the 48 questions were essentially multiple choice questions. Okay, so there is that. Then marking scheme, for every right answer, the exam awards you +3. For every wrong answer, 1 mark is deducted from your kitty, but there is no negative marking for the theta or the non-MCQ questions. In fact, I had written it down here as well. So that's how this exam and the marking scheme is spread. Now this exam is divided into 3 different sections. So those 3 sections are verbal ability and reading comprehension, data interpretation and logical reasoning, and then quantitative aptitude. So VARC is what you typically call as English. So the questions here, a large chunk of it is based on unseen passages that we call reading comprehension. And then the rest of the questions for the last few years, for the last decade or so, have all been paragraph based questions. So they can give you parajumbles, they can give you paragraph odd one out, etc. Then you have data interpretation and logical reasoning. Now data interpretation essentially tests your comfort level and your ability to interpret visual representations of data. So they may give you a table, they may give you a bar graph, a line graph, a spider chart, a bubble chart, whatever. And then logical reasoning, obviously as the name suggests, tests you more on logic. And once again, over the period of last decade or so, the emphasis has gradually shifted more towards the logic side of it than towards the DI side of it. So you do get DI, but then a larger chunk of it is logical reasoning. And then you of course have quantitative aptitude, where you get tested on things like arithmetic, algebra, number system, geometry, modern math and all. Now each of these sections is for 40 minutes. So you can think of the CAT as not just one exam, you can think of it as 3 40-minute exams that happen one after the other. And unlike some international exams where you get a choice in terms of the order in which you want to attempt those sections, in the CAT so far they do not offer that flexibility to us. The order is fixed for quite a few years now. This is the exact sequence that is followed in the CAT exam. And once again, this number can change. In fact, last year, this number went up to 22 in DILR section. For 4 years prior to that, this number remained just 20. So just think of these as indicative, but we do not really expect a very significant variation, a very significant change in the pattern anytime soon. And if it does happen, we'll be the first ones to let you know of that. So moving forward, now let's dig deeper into syllabus and difficulty level. So this is an exam where there is no officially defined syllabus, but when you work with us, we have analyzed the last 3 decades of the CAT exam, and we know the kind of ability and the core competencies that the colleges look for in you, and we go ahead and prepare you for those core competencies rather thoroughly. Now they may introduce new question types here and there, but typically those question types are just new ways of testing or checking for the same set of abilities. So if you are sorted with those abilities, if you've acquired those abilities and competencies, you shouldn't really worry much. And it's an aptitude exam. It's not something which is technical. In fact, a large chunk of what gets asked is something that you study until your 10th standard. So if I talk about reading comprehension, I mean unseen passages, you've studied them till 10th. Yes, this can be a little evolved version where they can focus more on non-fiction, the language can become difficult, the options can become closer, but the essence is that it is the same ability where if you've continued to read, you would find it comfortable, and if you haven't, you can always work with us and we can guide you along the lines of how you can go ahead and acquire it. Similarly, even if I talk about something like quant, at least 70% of the syllabus comes from those kind of topics that you've studied back in school, that too until 10th. So even if you did not opt for math after 10th, you will not really find it a very novel exam in the sense of the areas that are covered. Yeah, but where this exam challenges us is the fact that the questions are application based. So it is not an exam which is formula centric. It's not that you pick up a book, you memorize some formulae and then you can go ahead and ace this exam. The questions will test your conceptual clarity. The questions will test whether you can go ahead and apply that concept in a given situation or not. In fact, quite a few of those questions will also test your ability to combine multiple concepts together and apply them to a single area, and that mastery of the concepts as a result becomes very crucial, very important for an exam like the CAT. And within the exam, because there are multiple questions, you'd notice not every question will have the same difficulty level. So yeah, there are going to be questions that are easy and then there are going to be questions that are hard, and the good thing is if you can get around half the questions right within the allotted time, that would basically mean that you would reach that elite band of the top 1% of the students most of the years. So my general number is that, hey, if you can get 53% marks, you are definitely going to be in the top 1%. In fact, there have been years in the CAT exam when the overall difficulty level was very high, where even at around 36-37% marks, you could reach that top 1% level. But for the last few years, the kind of difficulty level that we've witnessed puts you at around 50% of the total score, which means that even if there are hard questions, you can afford to leave quite a few of them as long as you can identify all the easy questions and get them right. You are usually in a really good position to get selected. So let's now talk about preparation strategy and how we can go ahead and get those marks. So first up, the ideal preparation time. I have a very simple saying that it is never too early to start your preparation and it is never too late to start your preparation. In fact, when you start preparing for the CAT exam, you realize that in reality, your preparation started when you were in the 6th standard. It is just that you were not aware of it then. Come to think of it, for this exam, you require something like vocabulary, you require something like reading, you require something like, remember time and work, time, speed and distance kind of questions, all these things that you studied back in school. Right? So in reality, your preparation started then, you just becoming aware of it now, and therefore I'd say that the sooner you start, the better it is. When people meet me and they give me at least 1 year for preparation, I become very confident in my ability to guide them towards a great score. And the reason for that is that a lot of this preparation involves skills, and skills can be developed only when you put in consistent structured practice. So I can tell you the structured part of that practice. I can tell you what exactly it is that you need to do, but then you need to do it consistently for a prolonged period of time. And therefore I'd say that if you give yourself a year, you are definitely setting yourself up for success. If you can start your preparation even sooner, well, amazing. But the fewer months you leave with yourself, the more challenging it can turn out to be for you. I'm saying can because who knows, you are somebody who probably you've already done these things really very well in school, and maybe you are somebody who can master these areas quickly in 6 months. But then in my experience, for most of us, I'd say give it around a year, if not more, and that will put you in a really nice position. And in these years, during this year, what I want you to do is first and foremost master the concepts. So I think of it as I typically divide it into 2 phases, where phase 1 is where you finish the syllabus, you go through all the concepts. Now, merely because you finished the syllabus, you went through all the concepts, does not mean that you have mastered it. So once you are done with this phase 1, you switch over to phase 2, mastering the concept, and this is where a lot of practice using high quality practice questions comes into picture. So make sure that you know the syllabus, and then you have access to practice questions that allow you to master it. And eventually, finally, the last leg is where you write the mock tests. So they simulate the CAT exam for you. They allow you to figure out the weaknesses in your preparation, and then you can go ahead and fix those. They help you in building test taking stamina. They help you in refining your test taking strategies. And in fact, most of the successful CAT aspirants end up writing at least around 30 mocks, if not more. So you would want to ensure that you are going through all of these things in a systematic, planned, staged, phased manner. And then a lot of people also ask me, so is it necessary for me to join coaching, or can I study on my own? Now, see, the truth is, it's an aptitude test. I've already told you most of these things are things that you've already studied in schools. So if you have access to high quality material and you are disciplined, you can definitely study on your own. So it is not that coaching is necessary or essential. At the same time, I have not seen very many self-study candidates become successful. So my advice for you, in case you are thinking along these lines, is that, hey, why don't you start your preparation? Pick up a CAT prep book, Physics Wallah. At Physics Wallah, in fact, we also have our books for each one of the 3 sections that help you. Maybe you can get one and start working. And after putting in a bit of effort, let's say after devoting, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, why don't you go ahead and attempt a previous year question paper? Pick up a CAT paper. Let's say you're working on quant. Give yourself 3 weeks for quant. Finish certain chapters. Then pick up one of those old CAT question papers. Go through the quant section and then solve it. And then focus on those questions that belong to the chapters that you studied, and then see how comfortable you are. Could you get those right? If you could get those right, great. In case you got those wrong and you're like, oh, I know what mistake I made and I know how I need to fix it, then great. In that condition, you can continue to self-study. On the other hand, if you're not able to perform well, or if you're making mistakes and you're not sure how to fix those mistakes and what the reason behind those mistakes is, then at that juncture, it pays to work with a faculty member, and that is when coaching can become really very important for you. When it comes to choosing coaching, I think there are some very simple factors here. First and foremost, you would want to look at the teachers that you're working with. So you want to know the knowledge of the teacher. So has that teacher performed well in these exams? For example, I coach people for VARC, and I happen to have 100% and 100% tile in the VARC section of the CAT exam. So, I mean, mathematically 100 percentile is an impossibility. It means that all the people who wrote the CAT exam had a score less than your scores. But then eventually the top 9 to 13 people are typically awarded 100 percentile. So I was one of those top 9 to 13 people. Plus, I also had 100%, which means that I scored the maximum marks, which means that I was the absolute number one. So I have that knowledge. So the person that you're working with, does that person have that knowledge? Then knowledge alone may not be enough. You also need to figure out whether the person is able to transfer that knowledge to the students or not. So you can look at the past track record of that individual in producing champions. You can look at the kind of feedback that he has had in the past. For instance, this year, my feedback on a scale of 5 has been consistently around 4.9, and you can also, you'd find plenty of people who have studied from me. You can go ahead, talk to those, and then they can give you an absolute amazing insight. On top of that, even after all this, you need to know whether a faculty member's style is suitable for you or not. So ask for demo lectures or maybe work with that individual. So at Physics Wallah, if you go to our app or our website and go to the CAT category, you'll find a demo lecture taken by every faculty member. Then you'll also find quite a few sessions by us on our YouTube channel, MBA Wallah, this channel and our sister channel. You can go ahead and look at those videos and then make up your mind. So basically look at the faculty members, then look at the track record in terms of the results, look at the kind of and the volume of practice material that is provided, whether the mock tests are a part of the system or not. So these are the kind of things that you would like to, of course, see. And then there are some things that can't really be measured. Ideally, you want to work with somebody who is invested in your success, who's committed towards making you get a great percentile. So this softer side, you can't really see those on metrics, but do interact with the people, and you'd hopefully get a sense of whether that person cares for your career or not, is committed towards your career or not, and then maybe take a call on the basis of that gut feel as well. Okay, so taking you further from here, let's talk about the exam mode and logistics. So CAT exam is a computer-based test, and you need to report to certain centers in person in order to appear for this exam. When you fill up the CAT form, they ask you for your city of preference, and you need to mention 6 cities in your order of preference. You typically get the exam center at the first preference city. In some rare cases, it may happen that you could be sent to the second preference. And the exam is conducted across 3 slots, morning, afternoon and evening. You can be allotted any of the 3 slots, but here you may have a question. Are they using the exact same paper for all the 3 slots? They obviously can't do that. Otherwise, people in the morning slot can come out and share the questions with you, with those who are appearing for the evening slot. So they do not use the exact same exam. They use 3 different papers, although they try and ensure that the composition remains the same. The question types remain identical. The questions are obviously not going to be identical. So how do you really compare everybody across 3 papers then? So IIMs use something called normalization and scaling. So let us say one of these 3 slots turned out to be a difficult exam, whereas one of these 3 slots was relatively easier. So somebody who appeared for a difficult slot will have fewer marks. Somebody who appeared for easier will have higher marks. So what they'll do is that they'll compare the performance of everybody who appeared for those 2 exams, use that to decide on the difficulty level, and then they adjust the scores accordingly. So somebody who appeared for a challenging paper will have a few extra marks allotted. Somebody who appeared for an easier paper may have a few marks deducted, so they get the raw score and then they get the normalized score. There's a whole lot of statistics that goes behind it. It's an insanely complicated process, but then it is done in order to ensure that everybody is compared with each other in a very fair manner. Okay, so that's the logistics. And then once the exam gets over, you typically end up getting the result towards the end of December or early January, and then the next stages would also start usually around end of January or mid of February. And when it comes to the IIMs, you do not need to fill any separate form. The moment you apply to the CAT exam, you can automatically choose all the programs of all the 22 IIMs without any extra charge. But remember, I told you that there are 1200 more colleges that use the CAT scores. For those colleges, you need to go ahead and apply to them separately as and when their notifications come out. If you're regular on the app and on the Physics Wallah website, we keep sharing this information with you. In the final selection, the colleges would use a host of things where CAT score is one of the things. Apart from that, they also look at your academic profile. So your scores in 10th, 12th and graduation. Now, not every college looks at that, but then some of them do. Work experience can be given some additional weightage, diversity in terms of gender, in terms of academic background, in terms of at times even geography can lead to some extra marks. Then practically all the colleges put you through a personal interview. Some colleges like FMS also have defined marks even to your SOP, and this etc. includes some other things like psychometric tests. You can have a group discussion, you can have an extempore. So the final selection will depend on a combination of all of these different factors. Right? So that's how you are eventually given an admission letter, which means that you should not really ignore your academics. So in case you're watching me now and you've just about started your graduation, make sure that you get as high a score in your grad, as great a percentage, as good a CGPA as you possibly can. If you have younger ones in the family that you want to pursue MBA and you want them to pursue MBA eventually, make sure that you tell them about the importance of getting great marks in 10th and 12th as well. Okay, so as long as you cross 90%, you typically end up getting the maximum weightage possible from 10th and 12th. In graduation, a lot would also depend on your stream of education. So validity and retake, very simple. The CAT exam scores are valid for exactly 1 year. There is no limit on the number of attempts. CAT is conducted only once a year, but you can go on to attempt it for the rest of your life. They don't tell you that you can appear for it only 3 times or 4 times or whatever. And there is no age limit either, unlike a lot of other exams that we are aware of. For instance, in UPSC, you're limited to 4 attempts. You also get aged out. So that does not happen when it comes to the CAT exam. Now, are there any alternatives to the CAT? Absolutely, yes. A lot of Premier B schools in the country use CAT to shortlist students, but there are other B schools that may go on to use other scores. So you have that which is used by XLRI. All the symbiosis colleges will typically use SNAP. IIFT, now I've just put it here, IIFT used to conduct its own entrance exam until one point of time. TISS used to conduct its own entrance exam until one point of time, but now IIFT has stopped conducting its test and this has started taking the CAT scores. So I just put it here to drive home this point that although I'm saying that SNAP, CMAT, MAT, there are more exams like Maharashtra CET. If you are somebody who wants to target colleges internationally, GMAT, in fact, quite a few Indian colleges for some of their programs may also end up using the GMAT score. But the idea is that this may change when you appear for the exam. So on that particular year, we can look at which score the college that you're targeting is going to use. Okay, and then of course there are quite a few private colleges that may offer you profile-based admissions too, but they are not exactly colleges that come first to our mind when it comes to pursuing an MBA. So yes, there are colleges that may look at only your academics and interview and then offer you an admission, but then there are colleges that we usually do not talk that often, and therefore I'd say that you should focus your attention on the CAT and some of these other exams, especially those exams that lead to admissions in colleges that you are considering admissions to. And throughout this journey, so I've given you all the basic detail, but throughout this journey, I'm sure you are bound to have some more questions, some more concerns. After all, what I have covered today are just the FAQs, frequently asked questions, you may have a question which is not very frequently asked. For instance, another question that people on and off ask me is about the gap year. Sir, I have a gap year, is that going to be an issue? And my answer is no, or depends. So gap year is something that can come up in your interview, and if you have a valid justification for that gap year, then it is not an issue. On the other hand, if you don't have a valid justification for that gap year, it can turn out to be an issue. But after all, there are no negative marks for a gap year, right? So similarly, if you happen to have more such questions, please remember that Physics Wallah is there for you. You can reach out to us with your questions on our Telegram group, on our WhatsApp channel, on our YouTube videos. You can in fact drop a comment down below and we'll try to get back to you on that. So do stay in touch, and you and I can definitely work together and help your dreams become a reality. So that's what I wanted to share with you. All the very best with your journey, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, have a great time.